In this video, we will first look at two types of tools that you can use to add color to your visual notes. Then we'll dig into some specific techniques for how to use those tools intentionally, both during a visual note-taking session as well as after it. To understand how to use color effectively within your visual note-taking process, I think it's useful to break down your options into two types of tools: mark-making tools and highlighting tools. In this video, we will look at each of those individually, and then in the next, we'll look at some examples of how you might use them together. When I talk about mark-making tools, I mean things like pens, pencils, and maybe finer pointed markers. With these tools, you make a relatively fine line. And what you can do with those lines, as we've seen in previous lessons, is combine straight ones with curved ones in order to create the words and the images that you've already practiced in earlier modules. So in this category, you are using a tool of a particular color to make recognizable marks on the page, be they words or images. Let's contrast that with what you will do with a highlighting tool. Examples of these tools include highlighters, no surprise there, but also pastels and maybe even crayons or watercolors. The key component of these tools is that they produce a broad stroke, and the reason that is important is because you will use those tools to essentially change the background color of certain sections of your notes in order to make those sections stand out. Whether you are making marks or highlighting, the key to success with the use of color is consistent use. You'll want to give each color a particular purpose. Now, that purpose can be as broad or as specific as you like. As an example of a broad purpose, you could do something as simple as writing all words in blue and all images in black. As an example of something more specific, you might choose to highlight all actionable items in red. Note that in the broad example, there isn't much interpretation going on. You just know that if you're going to write a word, it will be with a blue mark maker. But in the specific example, there is some interpretation. You have to actively decide which of those elements on the page are actionable and which aren't. What's nice about that example is that it can be done after the fact. That's one of the benefits of highlighting. It's something that you can use after taking the notes to comb through and categorize what's on the page based on what you want to do next with those ideas. If you're making marks in color, it's more likely that you're doing that in the moment. That's one way of applying color during and after a note-taking session. But of course, that distinguishing of making marks in the moment and highlighting after the fact, that is by no means a hard rule. Now that you've seen some examples of how to use mark making and highlighting tools, I want you to get comfortable using those types of colorful writing utensils. So go grab some finer pointed pens or colored pencils, and also some broad stroked markers or pastels, and give the activities below this video a try before heading on to the next video, where we'll look at some examples of how to apply these colorful tools in real settings.